It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He's Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Tuesday. Gary, what is happening?
Well, I'm drinking my coffee.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing? Huh?
Yeah. I don't know. Okay for a Tuesday, but I'm only 6 minutes in. Give me another 5 minutes. I'll let you know how it's going.
All right, here's some of the headlines I'm looking at, all right?
Uh-huh.
Trump takes the dumbest tariff plunge.
Yeah.
Expectations on the economic effects of tariff. Tariff magic. Fed research exposes the tariff fearmongers. So there you go, on both sides of the
Yeah. All right.
the tariff issue out there, as the president 25% on a bunch of stuff for Canada and Mexico, and another 10% on China.
Mm-hmm.
Not unexpected. It's interesting because the whole thing about waiting till April 1st, remember that?
Yeah.
It's going to wait till April 1st, and then they were going to delay it. Now they put it in. It'll be interesting to see what happens with all of it. You saw the scrambling yesterday from the White House to, justify it all. You mentioned that Kevin O'Leary was on.
Right. And he was pretty rah about it. But by the end, he was pointing out that all the Canadian leaders were in D.C. trying to work a deal, and that the whole thing is a negotiation, and basically pointing to the fact that the tariffs won't be permanent. Well, negotiation means they get something, you get something. And you either lower the tariffs or you make them go away. I don't know. I'm not in the meetings with the Canadian leaders in Washington. They are all there, though.
Well,
he pointed out, what was it? You take energy out of it in terms of the trade imbalance with Canada, something we pointed out. You take oil out of it, and
we have a trade surplus,
and we have a trade surplus,
right?
So and I thought to myself, well, okay, now you're on the right track. The reaction was kind of all over the place. The market reaction, I think, was pretty clear, but the reaction of the media was all over the place.
Well, as we have said, the president on this is all over the place. I mean, when you look at, because the whole thing that we have a trade deficit with Canada, but we have a trade surplus if you take oil out of it.
Right.
Yet Trump just last week demanding that the foreign Canadian company come back and finish the Keystone Pipeline so we can bring more Canadian oil into the United States.
Right.
So if someone can figure that one out or answer that one, but what I see is the reporters are clueless. The reporters are economically illiterate. They have no idea what's going on. They don't know how to ask the right questions.
Right.
I was reading, for example, this is John Carney, he's been pro-tariff all along. And he's the one that started with the, it's not going to increase inflation. It's not going to increase inflation. It's not going to increase inflation. And of course, we talk about what are the major drivers of major inflation. And we know that comes from when the money supply goes through the roof. We all know that. We know that when there's too much. And that's what happens when government just borrows trillions of dollars and just says, here, take this money. It happens when government prints money in order to buy its own debt in order to keep the interest rates low.
Right.
The manipulation of the economy. That's what causes a massive inflation. But even reading in the article here, well, it's a one-time adjustment, not an inflationary spiral. Well, it all depends unless you keep putting tariffs on and the other side matches and you keep upping the tariffs. But as he wrote, the analysis shows that the actual impact on consumer prices will be modest, with an estimated increase of 0.8 to 1.63%. Well, if that happens right now, and you're trying to get inflation under 3%, that is a problem politically. But as we have stated before, when you look at what has happened in the past with tariffs, what it does, it rewards the company that produces the product that you're protecting, but every single American company has to pay more.
Right.
And that's the reality of tariffs, and everybody knows it. They know it. And my point is, they're getting more. The president, when he came out twice in the last few weeks and says, yes, it's going to cause some pain for Americans, but it'll be worth it in the long run. Well, what is the end goal? If the end goal, the interesting thing is, this is where the left has an opportunity to go after the Republicans or Trump like Republicans went after Biden. Now, it's not all intellectually true, but you can make the argument. And the argument would be, because I did see, I forgot where I read it, where I read that the president hasn't yet said he's going to renegotiate USMCA. Well, that was the president's baby. The president owned the rewriting of NAFTA.
Yeah,
he owned it. It was
he did the tariffs, he did the negotiations, and then he did the victory lap on it.
He did the victory lap and said it was the best trade deal ever.
Right.
Well, he's back in office, and by saying that they're ripping us off, he's saying he lied to the American public. This is what Democrats can say. He lied to the American public, and the president, using his emergency power, he's using his emergency power to try to fix something that he created by getting rid of NAFTA. Now, It's not true.
Right.
Because as you and I have said, USMCA was not that much different from NAFTA at all.
No.
It was, 97, 98% the exact same. But as we said at that point, if Trump wants to sell it, if he wants to sell it to the always Trumpers, as we said, as we call it, which is he's never wrong. I did it. It's the best deal ever, and they buy it. We were okay with it because it really didn't do all of the drastic things that we thought would hurt manufacturing. When you look at the tariffs, though, the concern on tariffs is not the same when it comes to increasing the money supply that you have seen that causes last inflation.
Right.
Massive increase in the money supply, because tariffs does not increase the money supply. It does raise prices, but it also has that other effect, which is reducing economic growth and layoffs. And when you see the Atlanta Fed, and again, they've been off before. We wait till the numbers come out, but when you look at it, the Atlanta Fed projection of the GDP for the first quarter is in recession territory.
Yeah, they updated it this morning, down from 1.5, now negative 2.8. And that was something that hit Monday morning, and the markets, reacted to that. Again, we'll see. Look, when the GDP now forecast says negative 1.5, it's like, all right, time to pay attention, but we'll see where it goes. Because their forecast model, you and I have some issues with their forecast model. We'll just put it that way. But when they updated on Monday morning for March 3rd to negative 2.8, it's like, okay. My question would be, what changed drastically? And you can get into the weeds on all their criteria and different reports that they use, different data that they use in order to come to that number. But the market, when that came out Monday morning, the market believed it. And when Trump stepped up to the podium and started talking about tariffs on Monday afternoon, the market believed it.
Well, when I was reading in Breitbart, it says, well, what the president wants is it isn't that hard on both Mexico and Canada. And I'm like, okay, what does he want? And they don't say.
Right.
When I was reading John Carney in Breitbart, I'm like, well, you didn't tell me what he wants. I don't know what he wants.
Right.
Because here's what the president has said. The president has said that the tariffs are being implemented because of fentanyl.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, if they get fentanyl down, will the tariffs go? No, the tariffs are going to stay.
No, that's kind of where he was during the press conference.
Right. The tariffs are going to stay. Then he's got his people out there saying, no, the tariffs are only temporary until we get it, like Breitbart. Well, the president isn't saying that.
Well,
the president is saying that we need tariffs. Remember when he said, if you're against tariffs, this is just 3 weeks ago where he put out the True Social statement. If you're against permanent tariffs in order to fund our government and get rid of the income tax, you are controlled by China.
He said something similar today. It wasn't on income tax, and I don't think he mentioned China directly in the statement, but it was something similar to that. You know, kind of if you're not for tariffs, you're not pro-America. And you see all the analysis after his press conference, and it was, well, yeah, it's negotiation. Well, negotiation means then the other side gets something, and then there won't be any tariffs.
Yeah.
Or they'll be reduced greatly. I expect the tariffs from China to remain intact, as some of them did from his first term. There was question about whether or not the Biden administration was enforcing those tariffs. I don't know, and I don't know, and that came reportedly from the White House, the Trump White House, whether or not Biden was enforcing the China tariffs. I can't tell you where they are on that. This is another thing. Lay it out. When you're all over the place, you're not telling anybody anything.
Right.
There are no answers.
What does the market hate the most?
Chaos and confusion. Uncertainty.
And you've got the left hand saying it's going to be temporary. You've got the right hand saying it's going to be permanent.
And the market's trying to figure out what it believes.
And then when you sit there and as you say that basically if you're not for tariffs, because the majority of Republicans are against tariffs. And if you look at the polling, people look at it and say China, it's justified because they're involved in unfair trade practices and stealing intellectual property.
Right.
But when you see Mexico and Canada, it's a complete opposite.
Right.
The majority of Republicans don't stand by them. So when you tell Republicans that you're controlled by China if you're not for tariffs to run the tax system, which we've already gone through the numbers, it's impossible. You will never be able to fund the government with tariffs. We've done the numbers. You can do the numbers.
Right.
And we actually looked at the higher than what imports are to this country. You take $3.5 trillion, which is more than it was, I think, last year. But we said let's make it higher, just to make it easier to do. Mm-hmm. You take it, 3.5 to $4 trillion in imports, and I think the last figure was 3.1 trillion. Mm-hmm. But let's say it's 3.5. And you put a 25% tariff on everything that comes into the country, not just Mexico, Canada, but everything. Every single country gets tariffed on everything that comes into the country.
Right.
And you put a 25% tariff in, you cannot pay the interest on the debt.
Right.
Forget about the budget. You can't pay the interest on the debt.
Yeah.
With that amount of money.
Right.
So the president I have no idea. The president makes so much great sense on some things. And then you would think that they would have their act together to have a consistent story on tariffs, and they're all over the place, where all you get, it's like, I don't know. I have no idea what's going on, because they say one thing one day, something else the next day. But I know that when you come out and to make your point, you say if you're not for something, then basically you're a traitor to the country, that you've got a problem selling it to your own party.
Yeah.
China, no. Right. I've got no problem with China or anybody who is really, breaking any, if Europe, for example, You look at it, and if Europe has why isn't he going after Europe when you look at what they're doing with automobiles?
Right.
Go after that. None of it makes any sense.
Right.
And you're causing confusion in the market. Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to cover it up by saying, well, it's not going to cause inflation. Well, I didn't say it was going to cause massive inflation. The critics are not saying that. The critics are saying it is going to put inflationary pressure on. And even those that are for the tariffs are saying, well, it could raise it 1% to 1.5% right now. On top of the 3% we have right now, my fear is that he does this. Immigration's taken care of. The public looks at it and goes, they're saying it. We took care of it in a month.
Right.
It's done.
Right.
What's the next issue? There's only one other issue.
It's the economy. It's inflation.
The economy. Inflation. Prices.
Well, because, and everybody, we hear that. Navarro was out yesterday. Well, there was no inflation based on the tariffs in Trump's first term. Well, why is that? Because there's a response by the consumer. The consumer makes different choices, which is what you're trying to do. Which means, okay, we're going to go and we're going to make different choices. You're not necessarily always, that doesn't mean you're going to buy the domestic based on the import or versus the import.
He's wrong on that. There was inflation. There wasn't massive inflation.
Right.
There is some
and I
inflation.
may be misquoting him. He may have said something closer to what you just said.
Navarro is an idiot.
Well, Navarro's pro-tariff. If those
Navarro
don't
is
know,
an idiot. I'm sorry. He's an idiot. He's
And
the one guy I don't want. When he had Larry Kudlow in, when he had Steve Moore and his advisors in his first term, I was okay with that. Navarro is a complete clueless idiot.
Well, and my point is the consumer changes. You and I talked about this during the pre-show meeting. What the consumer does changes. It doesn't always mean, well, we're going to elect to buy the domestic product. It doesn't always work that way. It does affect the economy. Tariffs do affect the economy. There's no way around it.
In a negative way.
Yep.
Right. And they admitted it.
Right.
The president admitted it.
It's going to be pain.
Right. 866-90-RED-EYE.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. It's not always easy to spring back from the harsh days of winter to warmer months ahead. From de-icing chemicals to hidden debris underneath snow and ice, winter conditions can do serious damage to your truck. Here's a must-do maintenance check to help you minimize downtime and stay rolling. Inspect your brake hoses, linings, and slack adjusters for any wear and tear. Listen for any air leaks that may have resulted from moisture freezing up in the system. Check slack adjusters for proper stroke and lubrication. And check your brake linings or pads to ensure proper thickness.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, I don't think there is anyone, not even in the administration, that can explain the president and his position on what he wants with tariffs.
They've been so great on communication on every other thing. Everything else, very blunt. Does anybody have any questions about the deal with Ukraine and or what happened on Friday, or, there's transparency everywhere. And this isn't, lack of transparency. It's lack of clarity. And there's a difference. And you've got to have clarity in this moment. And you got to point to what you want. And if the idea is, well, we can't show our hand as to what we want because we're negotiating with the other side. Well, eventually you have to tell the other side anyway. So there's no way around that. You have to tell the American people what you're trying to achieve and what it means to them.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here, as always. I'm trying to find it here. Oh, gee, I have Molly Hemingway's response, and because I saved it, and I can't find the original thing from CBS, where she wrote to CBS, "Your propaganda is inscrutable. I think you mean to say a measure that sought to ban boys from competing on girls' sports teams." They wrote it by stating that the Senate, the Democrats in the Senate, defeated a bill that would allow that would ban trans women and women from women's sports. CBS wrote it that way.
Freudian slip a little bit. Trans women and women?
And women, right.
Yeah.
Right. They're making the point that a man can be a woman if the man says so.
Well,
and that's why she said
I took it as you're actually banning women, actual women, from women's sports.
That's the point. They're saying
that's why I said Freudian slip.
Yeah, they're banning. Yeah. It wasn't a Freudian slip. They mean it.
I know that, but they don't understand what they're actually writing.
Think about it, though. Every single Democrat senator, remember, the Senate is supposed to be the part of the legislative branch that is the pondering.
Yeah, the more thoughtful. We're the upper chamber.
Right, we're the upper chamber. We're more thoughtful. Understand how radical the Democratic Party is. How incredibly radical they are.
Yeah.
This shows you, because you're saying, wait a minute, this is 80-20. They believe the reason they vote this way on something that is pure insanity is because they know they're the party of racism with identity politics, and they know they're the party of hating women, of misogyny. They know it.
Yep.
They know the public is against it. They know the majority of their party is against it, but they know the majority of their party will stick with them even if they are racist and misogynist.
Yep.
That's why they voted that way. Understand that the voter in the Democratic Party promotes the racism and women hatred, the incredible Neanderthal misogyny of the Democratic Party. The voter may disagree with it, but they'll vote for the insanity of racism and misogyny.
Yeah. Yep. I mean,
that's why it's happening.
It's very, very clear. The Democrats have no interest in protecting women's rights.
Nope, none. Absolutely none. And not only that, you throw the misogyny in, the hatred, because they hate women. They're okay with the threats and the intimidation and the bullying of women that simply want to play women's sports.
Yeah.
They're okay with it.
Yeah.
They're into the emotion of hatred towards women who wish to play against other women. Think about it. There's like some kind of sick turn on that Democrats get because of it.
No,
because you don't hear any of them complaining. I don't know one Democratic voter. I don't know one. I know a ton of Democrats that have ever said, my party is insane. Now, some have left and gone to the Republican Party, but the ones that remain, nobody complains about it.
You would think there would be this massive, massive exodus based on this.
Yep.
And there really wasn't. I mean, we saw some. But those who remain, as you point out, in the Democratic Party, the rank and file, this is what you want. The end of Title IX, ultimately the end of the Civil Rights Act. If anyone can belong to a protected group simply by saying so, there are no protected groups. Because the Democrats don't put any standard on it. They're not saying, okay, qualifiers. If the person goes through the surgery, goes through the hormone treatment for 10 years, blah, 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 blah. They're not saying that. All they have to do is say, this is why they say identify. That means the person just says, this is who I am. That's all that's required. That's the only requirement. And if anybody can belong to a protected group simply by saying so, there are no protected groups. Period. The moment you try, try and work around that Rubik's Cube, it ain't going to happen. And the left is proud of this. You saw it. How many votes on this subject now, total, between the House and the Senate? How many?
How many times have they voted on this? Numerous times.
Yeah.
Numerous times.
Yeah. Over and over again.
Right. Yeah. I don't know exactly how many.
It hasn't changed.
Nope.
I guess is my point. You've seen this. Was it going to change after November of last year? No. We've been saying they're not. We said this at the end of the Obama years. They're not done. And they aren't done. They're looking for a way. We brought you the different analysis by people on the left. What we need to do is basically not talk like Democrats, not talk like the bat soup crazy party anymore. We need to go back to lying. You and I covered that. We're old enough to remember when the Democrats would lie to get what they wanted. You know, Obama lied about gay marriage. We all know that. And then when he got into office, he grappled and came out in support of it.
Very quickly, we'll get back to this. See Chuck Todd saying, Biden's not a family man. Mm-hmm. He's a ruthless politician. I just can't remember they were trying to sell it all. He's a family man. Yeah. He's a family man.
He just loves his family.
We'll get to that coming up. I just thought about that and go, well, they're now starting to destroy that old lie.
Right.
But I've asked this question and never received a response from any Democrat. Why do you hate women? Right. What is it? What is it that drove you from claiming that you were for feminism to now believing that a man gets to define what a woman is, and a man, because a man says so, gets to take opportunities away from women? Why?
Yeah.
Democrats, why do you hate women? You know, we know it. Serpent said it a couple of weeks ago again on this, mm-hmm. on the identity politics, where he called it racism, the racism of identity politics. Democrats, why have you accepted your party becoming the racist and misogynist party?
It's and for anyone. And by the way, Tim Walz floating the idea that he could run in 28. Shut up.
I like that a lot.
But for anyone, because right now it shows Kamala, right? We've gone over the surveys that show she's still at the top of the list, right? It's a long ways away. We know that. We've been doing this a while. But right now, it's Kamala. And what have we heard? When she dropped out of the primary, where her own party was choosing the nominee, she had to drop out early, and because she had no funds, no money, chaos, they couldn't pull it together. December 3rd, 2019, she dropped out of the 2020 primary before 2020, and then said, America is racist and is misogynist. No. That's your own party.
Right.
This is donors to your own party as well. And the thing is, you can't come back anymore, whoever you are. If you're a female Democrat running for office and you don't win, well, it's because people don't like women. Whoa! Let's bring up the votes. Let's go to the tally board.
I know.
You know, and this is your party.
And you
your
can't,
party.
Right, and you can't deny it. You can't say, you guys are lying about this.
No.
You can't say that. You know it. You know it's
true.
on
record.
Right.
All of it is a matter of record.
Right. And there's nobody on either side denying it.
No. They're proud of this.
They're proud.
And the rank and file is saying nothing about it.
Nope. And understand, this is the problem that we face. It's not just the Democrats in power. It's the Democratic voter that has this Neanderthal mindset that the racism of identity politics and the misogyny, the hatred of women is okay with Democrats. Democrats, why do you believe, we know you're listening, why do you believe that way?
Right.
Respond in some way.
Right. Do something.
Besides you're a Nazi.
Oh,
Yeah. Besides you're a Nazi.
Right.
Because you believe But they're just quiet. They accept it. And it's pure insanity. Now, it's right. Now, they need to bring this up again and again, bring the bill up again and again and again and again, get every single Democrat on record.
Yep.
The hatred of women from the Democrats in the Senate now is unanimous. They all hate women. The women in the Democratic Party hate women.
Yeah. You used to have a march.
Man,
well, you had it once, effectively.
Then it became the People's March.
The People's March, which you can't even call people women anymore. Oh, unless it's a man.
Exactly right.
I mean,
we can't define a woman unless it's a man who says he's a woman. Then we can define a woman. A woman is, to the Democrats, a woman who is a man who says he is a woman. Otherwise, we can't define women because we just don't know. We're not biologists.
Exactly. I wasn't good at biology.
I mean, it's absolutely,
absolutely
insane. Absolutely insane.
And again, they're not going to change. This is their fight. They're staying on it. They're staying on it. They're staying on it. They're staying on it.
Yeah, they're not going to give it up.
They're not going to give it up.
And they're not going to give up the racism of identity politics.
No.
They're not going to give up any of this.
No. You think about all the people who the racism and bigotry and misogyny that the left has, thrown all of their targets over the years. My gosh. I'm thinking of Riley Gaines when it comes to women's sports. Of course. We think of Mia Love. We think of Tim Scott. We think of all of these people, Justice Clarence Thomas, all these people. If you're a conservative, if you're a woman, sit down. It's the men's time now to play on the women's team. If you're black and you're a conservative, either there's something wrong with you, somebody's controlling your mind. You can't think as a conservative. You can't have individual thought.
No individual thought is allowed in the Democratic Party. You are judged by whatever group we decide to put you in next.
Right. Wow. And they're still championing that cause. Identity politics will always reign on the left, at least in my lifetime. I don't see it going away.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's our Harley. I'm Gary McNamara on the radical transgender movement. We talked about the Democrats in the Senate unanimously voting for males to play in female sports. Here's an example of the insanity. Minnesota State Representative Elisa Kozlowski talking about keeping men out of women's sports is genocide. Here we go.
And they aren't going to stop being transgender just because you strip them from sports or from housing or from their health care or any other public place that you don't want us to be. And so, members, make no mistake that this is just another version of state-sanctioned bullying and genocide. And I don't say that loudly.
She's insane. Absolutely insane.
Well, it's, again, that's what they want you to believe. They want you to believe, there are people dying, and, they want you to believe that, after Trump won, everybody on the left was going to prison. It's this kind of hyperbole and fear-mongering, and it is insane. Absolutely.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you.
On the Epstein thing, you saw there was some movement on that one yesterday, huh?
Yeah.
Pam Bondi said got a truckload of stuff, and they let go the head of the SDNY FBI field office. When they were saying the SDNY, they didn't say the field office. They were just saying the SDNY, which is actually the Attorney General's office, which is technically separate from the FBI. Now they're saying that the head of what they're saying is the SDNY FBI field office had the stuff.
Right.
Because we had asked that earlier.
Right.
Remember? Well, we'll get to that coming up here in a little bit, and more on the insanity of the radical transgender movement. But I think it's a totally legitimate question, because it's something that you can't even it's something that isn't even debatable. It's not something that somebody can, somebody from the Democratic Party can call us up and say, well, that's not happening. We don't want men to play women's sports.
Right.
Because they do. And on identity politics, forget about us saying identity politics. You've had enough Democrats and enough Democrat analysts that have come out and said most recently, James Carville, identity politics is racism. You're judging people by groups and not individuals. These are core tenets. They're not outliers. They're the mainstream of the Democratic Party. And even though you'll have Democratic voters say, well, we don't agree with it, you keep voting for it. It's not like this just appeared. Identity politics, the modern identity politics movement, has been around really since the late 80s, early 90s.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
When really, as I say, I believe the modern identity politics movement really came to the forefront. You might have said started with Clarence Thomas, and then it went on to when conservative talk radio, really the modern version of conservative talk radio came in the late 80s, early 90s, and you had conservative talk show hosts that were black. They were the ones that were viciously attacked.
Right.
They were called Uncle Tom. They were called everything in the book. Why? Because liberals believe whatever group you're in, you must all think alike. Individual thought is wrong.
Yeah.
Remember, I didn't say it. They did. Individualism is a product of white supremacy.
Yeah.
They said that.
Yeah, right.
We didn't come up with that.
Right.
They did.
Right.
Individualism, autonomy of the individual. I think the way that I think because I've analyzed it, and my skin color has nothing to do with how I process thoughts and nothing to do with my critical thinking. Sorry, that's white supremacy in itself. So you really close the door on anybody having individual thought who may want to leave the Democratic farm by saying, well, if you believe you're an individual, then you're part of the whole white supremacist movement because autonomy and individuality is racist.
Right.
Wow. It's just mind-boggling where they've gone.
Well, look, everything would be racist, right? Autonomy, individuality, of course it's racist. Of course. This is how they've corralled people for a long, long time. This is how they build the fear. This is how the mob has intimidated over and over again. And politically, they work as a group. Make no mistake about it. There is a culture in the Democratic Party and on the left, but the Democrats work as a group, and they are very, very adamant about identity politics because without it, what happens? If they can't build new victims, this is what they do over and over again. Well, okay, we need a new set of victims. Now that set of victims is in a subgroup, a new one. But everybody that's not in that subgroup, even people that were in their other group yesterday, are now oppressors by design. That's by default. There's no way around that. You can't undo that. And they've done it over and over again, which is interesting because eventually they'll get down to individualism.
Yeah.
Because everybody will be separated from the other groups.
Well, we said that
down to the point.
Right.
Yeah, we've been saying this for years. Once you do the math and you keep going, you get down to individualism, and that's racist.
And then we all hate each other.
Exactly.
Or I look at you and say, you're the oppressor.
Right.
I'm the victim. No, I'm the victim. You're the oppressor.
Exactly.
This
has to be at the basis of everything that they do. You heard, I don't know if you heard the audio from the Tim Walz podcast interview that he did where he said he's open to running in 2028.
I didn't hear it. I saw the story. I didn't hear the.
I only heard a clip of it. I didn't hear the entire thing. But I wouldn't have listened to it because I was laughing so hard. People are on board for our ideas. We just didn't convey it properly, that kind of thing. I don't understand why we didn't win. The ticket had a great leader, a woman of color. Wait a minute. Are you not going to talk about her qualifications? Now, you and I know she doesn't really have any. But he wasn't going to try and qualify it. It had to be, boom, identity politics. That's who they are. Joe Biden picked her based on identity politics. They were talking to him in 2020. The media asked, who are you going to pick as the VP? I don't know, but it's going to be a black woman. But are you saying you've narrowed it down to 2 candidates, 3 candidates, and they happen to all be black women? No, that's not what he was saying. What he was saying is, I'm going to pick a black woman because identity politics. Hey, Joe, how many genders are there? 3. Wrong answer.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
Oh my gosh,
we had so much fun with that one.
But they, that's it's everything to them. And the rules change every day. And the reason the rules change every day is because you have more and more people claiming to be offended or worried about other people being offended. And that's the basis of the failure of DEI. I mean, aside from the monstrous, horrible basic tenets of DEI and why it's flawed, the reason it couldn't work and they couldn't do anything through DEI is because the DEI handbook, rule book, changed every day. Remember the big internet project, the massive global or national internet project? They were trying to deliver high-speed internet, and they couldn't spend the money. They couldn't put a shovel in the ground
Yeah,
because
they never
of
spent
DEI.
they never spent the money for
Because
3
of
years.
DEI, because they couldn't move.
Yeah.
Because every consideration, well, when you do a project like that, if you're talking about building infrastructure, then you're going to hire contractors. Well, we need to vet all the contractors through our DEI handbook.
So much regulation in DEI where, think about this, liberalism got to the point where they could tax you and take your money, but they couldn't spend the
They
money.
could allocate the money. It's all sitting there in a pile, basically. I mean, not really. But it's sitting there and ready to use, and they couldn't use it.
This in the last hour, China levies 15% tariffs on imports of U.S. chicken, corn, and other farm products, 10% on soy and others. We'll keep you updated on that one. Let's go to Kirk in Los Angeles about tariffs. Kirk, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you. When I called, the reason I called, I know you're not for tariffs. I don't mind the reciprocal tariffs, but I was watching Channel 9 here in L.A., which is an affiliate with CBS, and they were talking about, with their doom and gloom, about how much money the tariffs will cost each person. But they only cited one economic, breakdown of it. And what got me thinking, because when you guys talk about polls, you use several polls. Well, they said we have one source, and it was Peterson Economic something or other. And I'm wondering if they're cherry picking to just because they love Trump so much to make him look as bad as possible and pick whoever has the worst numbers.
Well, they cherry pick all the time on. And by the way, we're like you. I have no objection to, for example, with China. I've always thought the mistake that Trump didn't take advantage of in his first term was you build the coalition with your friendly trade partners. You build it and you build them with Canada, Europe, Mexico, South America. I mean, the president said yesterday that he's going to look to develop trade relations and really, with South America. Well, when you look at it overall, you should be looking at the entire free world and the people willing to do it. If somebody like Europe, if Europe has it should have never been allowed. We should have immediately had reciprocal tariffs when they hit us on automobiles, when Europe does something like that. I have no problem with that at all. Canada's not the problem. And and the public sees it. Republicans see it and conservatives see it. And I think that when Trump came out and said, that we need to have tariffs across the board all the time to pay, because it will pay completely, because we did it back in the 1800s when, good God, in the 1800s, the federal government was 2% of GDP. Now it's 25%. You can't do it. It's very easy to figure out the numbers. Don't use, that's what confuses me. I don't know how I know how Navarro thinks. That's why, when I sat there and somebody complained, you called Navarro an idiot, because I think he's complete tariff. He's just like a socialist, but in another way, saying, I know how to manipulate an economy the way I want to manipulate an economy. And that's what bothers me, because there's a tremendous amount of arrogance in anybody who believes that. Trump, I don't know what he believes, because he's all over the place. I don't know whether he wants temporary tariffs. I don't know whether he wants permanent, because he has said both. He has said the tariffs hurt, but it's worth it, which means eventually we would drop them. But then he said we're not going to drop them. I don't know where he stands. But, will the left cherry pick certain things? Yes. But will tariffs have a negative effect? Yes. And now we're all now in agreement with that, including us, Trump, and whoever, because that when you increase the cost of the supply chain, it's going to have a negative effect, either in increased prices, less economic growth, layoffs, or a combination of all. It's just a reality of when you raise prices. Yep. When the Democrats used to say that minimum wage doesn't harm anything because people have more money and then they spend it, well, you forgot the other side of it, which is an increased cost to business. And what's the result of that? You've got to look at economics I think, across the plane. But no, does the left cherry pick polls? Absolutely. And you know that we don't. We'll say if there's one poll out, we'll say, well, that's one poll. A couple of weeks ago when the polls came out and said Trump's doing horrible, we said, well, there were 3 polls Monday through Wednesday that showed Trump doing better.
Yeah.
There were polls Wednesday through Friday showing he was worse. And then by the time we got to the next week, there were polls showing him doing better.
Yeah.
So you can manipulate all of that. Yes, you can. But no, we have
Thanks, Kirk.
Yeah, we have no problem We have no problem with tariffs, reciprocal tariffs against China if you're stealing intellectual property,
right?
Or
right.
you are, you are involved in unfair trade practices.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the VAT tax, and Trump says, well, because if you have a VAT tax, that's a tariff. And the thing about the VAT tax is, man, it's something that Democrats would love. And VAT tax, I don't think any company ever promoted VAT tax to do better. I don't think they ever promoted it as doing better economically speaking, because it's a tariff on something, because the VAT tax, goes across the board.
Right.
But the VAT tax, the reason that socialist governments love the VAT tax,
it is a VAT tax.
The VAT tax is because it's hidden.
Yeah. Right.
It's not like a sales tax where you can see it.
Right.
It's applied to each level of manufacturing, and they love that because you never get to see the receipt as a taxpayer or as a consumer. You never get to see what it's actually costing you.
Right. You see the overall cost. You don't see the breakdown, the itemization of what the VAT tax is contributing to that cost. And Kevin O'Leary seems to be, based on what he told Martha McCallum on Fox News yesterday afternoon, seems to be of the mindset that there's going to be a NAFTA 3. And I have a lot of questions. He's just one person analyzing what the president was saying yesterday in the press conference on tariffs. We asked the question, okay, great, but does that mean you're not happy with USMCA?
But that doesn't make sense with Canada. We have a trade surplus with Canada if you don't count oil.
Right.
And again, it was Trump that was demanding that the Alberta company, was it TC Energy, come back and start, and finish the Keystone pipeline so we can pump more Canadian oil through here. So I don't know where he stands. You can't figure it out. Well, we have a trade surplus. Are you going to do you want to rebuild the Keystone pipeline and have the company come over and do it and then put a massive tariff so we don't import? It doesn't make any sense.
No.
And nobody's asking the right questions in the media.
Nope.
No one.
Nope.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
When freight markets threw their small fleet a curveball in 2024, Alpha Drivers Transportation's Alec Kostouris and his team got creative to add value.
How do we operate the trucks, capturing and leveraging our strengths in light of those markets? So, for example, somebody who's living off the load board is probably dying on the vine. We decided that we would be better off. First, it was with Joel and Travis running together, and now it's Travis and his brother Connor running together as a team. So we are able to provide a higher level service, get some premium to what I call the base rate in that regard. Another strategy has been we brought one of the trucks out to Colorado where we work with a dedicated customer. So it's more of quality of service than quantity of service.
Find plenty more advice from Overdrive Magazine's Truckers of the Month and Trucker of the Year winners at overdriveonline.com/PIB.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
Red Eye Radio, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome. Thank you for being here. So to the last caller, I don't know. I don't have no idea what type of economic impact, and I don't think anybody does, that the tariffs will have. We haven't been here.
No, not on this level.
Yeah, not on this level. So I can't tell you. All I can say is when you increase price along the supply chain, things happen.
Right. Yep. Well, there's going to be a response, and there's going to be a response from trade partners, going to be a response by the consumer. So, we'll see where it goes. Because the question is, how long would they be in place? The president made it sound like, as of yesterday, they're not going away.
Right.
It's not, which tells me, okay, that's not a negotiation tactic. These aren't negotiations.
Well, that's what I mean. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. Everybody has a different opinion on what the tariffs are about, which causes confusion in the marketplace.
Right.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, just going through audio cuts. I found this one from Swalwell.
All right.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
If you look around the world, our biggest economic enemy is China. Our biggest geopolitical enemy is Russia. In a matter of 3 years, without losing a single U.S. soldier, we have decimated their military and their economy. It's been the greatest return on investment for any military expenditure ever. And as far as the return on investment for soldiers' lives, it's infinity because you can't divide zero.
Huh?
What? Is there a translation available?
Well, the one thing that, you and I said yesterday is that long term, Trump is looking at this and looking at a weakened Russia right now because of the war, which is why Trump is attempting to negotiate. And I saw who was out there yesterday. I forgot who was out there yesterday. It was Vance. Saying, we're not going to play it easy with Russia. They got stuff they got to do. They view Russia in a vulnerable moment right now. I think they view Russia as weak. I'll actually agree with Swalwell. They believe China is the biggest enemy. Russia is in a weakened position. And so the goal, whether achievable or not, is to move Russia closer to us than to China.
Right. Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean, as the left tries to make it, because if you're saying, well, okay, let's get closer to China, well, I mean, you can't make that case. But the administration views China as a much bigger potential problem than they do Russia.
Right. Yeah.
And so they want to do everything. I don't know if it's possible, but it's not a bad goal because, well, number one, we don't know how weak they believe Russia is. Like I said, it's interesting because people take my source and go, really? You're taking the word of that guy? But when I saw Jeff Skunk Baxter on the Jason Alexander podcast, and Jeff Skunk Baxter, original member of Steely Dan, and also was with the Doobie Brothers and a great session guitarist, is one of the world's most respected weapons analysts. Has been working for the Pentagon for years. In fact, in the podcast, he told the story of working with Ringo Starr, and Ringo went, yeah. And he wasn't angry. He was just saying it matter-of-factly. He was probably sort of kidding him, saying, yeah, we're going to be sitting here trying to record some of the stuff for this this music that I want to produce, and, Men in Black are going to show up. And Jeff Skunk Baxter said 20 minutes later, the phone rang, and two guys in suits, you got to go. And he's the one that said it, because Jason Alexander, I couldn't believe it. George Costanza is asking a good question. He said, how powerful is Putin in Russia? And he said, not very. That the weapon systems compared to, that our biggest worry is China, North Korea, whatever, that the weapon systems, everything they have there, we're not as worried about them, that it's a weakened Russia.
Right.
And I found that really interesting, which made me think, okay, what do they think inside the CIA? What is the president being told? And we don't know that. So you can look at it and say, okay, they're weakened. All right, let's end this and let's try to get them. Because another thing that we don't know what the situation is inside the Kremlin.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Right.
The people of Russia cannot be happy with what's going on.
No.
You look at how long this has dragged on.
I think morale is one of the biggest problems for Putin right now.
Right.
Public morale, but also morale within his troops.
And so you wonder where they're going to go. And like I said, so much of it you don't know. It's a guess by everybody.
Yeah. Right.
As to what's going on there. So, greatest return on investment for military expenditure ever. Well, I don't know about that.
No.
I think you may have some debate on that for World War I and World War II.
Yeah, maybe. A little.
As to the impact, a week in Russia is different than ending Nazi fascism and Japanese authoritarian imperialism worldwide.
Well, and when it comes to Swalwell specifically, China is no longer a threat because they broke up. They're no longer dating. I mean, she might post some stuff on social media about him, but in terms of threat, there are things that are. What concerns me is beyond the Trump years. I mean, the future always concerns me. But there was the story out, I forget who had the story, that basically Putin will just wait Trump out because he knows now it's not going to be a two-term. In the first term, okay, it could be, a total of 8 years, so that's a long time to wait things out. This time, if he can just wait it out until 28. I don't know if that's why Zelensky, Trump mentioned yesterday, the fact that Zelensky said the war is not going to end anytime soon, that it's going to go on for a long time.
And then he reversed it by the time he got to the end of the day.
Right. And Trump's saying, well, I hope he's wrong about that, And the thing is if Putin is wanting to just wait it out, I don't know what deal you make at the table with Putin. I mean, I have no idea. It could be, there are many things that could be a great deal or a successful deal that are made between Zelensky and Putin. I just don't know what those are. I'm not saying there aren't any. But my concern is beyond the Trump years. Deals are made to be broken. Arrangements are made to undo. And many of our allies and our enemies and frenemies, I think, had this wait-and-see attitude. See if the Democrats take it again in 28 because they know they can act under weak administrations. Those are the things that I'm greatly concerned about. I'm always concerned about the future, but I think right now there's a monumental shift going on. And either things are going to start to come together or they're not. both on the global economy, the domestic economy, and everything else, and national security for the U.S. I really have a great concern about the idea that, all right, everybody gets to the table, okay, we shake hands, and then in 28, if Democrats take power, well, I mean, gosh, at the midterm, if they take the House and the Senate. Now, that's not going to be the same as controlling the military from the executive branch, but still, cog in the wheel approach is something the Democrats are very good at. Again, it goes back to what you and I have been saying, and the Democrats aren't done. They still have tens of millions of supporters. The changing of the hearts and minds, very refreshing to see in November of last year, but it has to continue. And the continuation of that requires a greater effort for those who haven't been awakened by everything that's gone on in the last several years. If you're not on board yet, it's going to take a lot more effort to get you on board, to change the hearts and minds that still aren't there. We know where the Democrats are. We know exactly what they're doing. But what boggles the mind is the fact that they still get tens of millions of people to vote for them. They can still win elections. So things have to be moving in a very solid direction. And we'll see what happens with tariffs. We'll see if it's like Kevin O'Leary was saying right after the president spoke yesterday on Fox News. Kevin O'Leary, there's going to be a new NAFTA 3, and it's going to be great. And all right, we'll see.
Well, again, that my major concern is, I wanted Trump in office and voted for him a third time because I want an end to the weaponization of government. I want an end to the insanity. The problem of the border, they solve like that.
Yep.
In the American public's mind, it's been solved because the administration was already saying it's at a, who was it? Was it NBC or which network said 25-year low?
Yeah. Right.
And so people are like, okay, we solved the problem. We didn't need Congress to do it. The president, they've been talking about it the last couple of days. The president was able to do it. What's the next issue?
Right.
The economy.
Yeah. And they were neck and neck, the border and economy,
right.
On the top issues.
And if the economy is not good in the midterms, Trump is completely a lame duck.
Yeah.
If they lose one of the, one of the the House or the Senate.
Right.
And they could lose the House because it's so incredibly close. That's my only concern. My only concern is that Trump has power to do the vast majority of what I agree with.
Well, and you have momentum right now.
Yeah, I know people get upset whenever we talk about, tariffs. And I think people get upset, Republicans, because they know that's a weak spot that Trump has, and they don't like us talking about it.
Well, because it's all over the place. Nobody knows what's going to happen.
Right.
On the border, we knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
There was no question about how it was going to be handled, and they did it. Tremendous job.
Yeah.
On national security, I can sleep during the day. We don't sleep at night. I can sleep during the day with Trump on watch. I don't have any concern.
Well, and
there's no greater concern than that knowing the enemy is out there and things might happen. But my gosh, under Biden, nobody was in charge. But you look at tariffs, and the question is, beyond the expense of tariffs or the impact of the economy, the impact on relations, what does it do? I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, our allies are going to be our allies. We're the strongest. You want to walk in our shadow when it comes to international, geopolitical security. That's a fact. But how much do they trust, what's going on here in the U.S.? And I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
It will, because I want everything. I want the momentum they had coming in January to continue, so that at the midterm there's no problem with the GOP winning, and in 28 someone takes the reins, the baton, and runs with it instead of the Democrats coming back.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Oh, it's tonight.
What? Oh, yes.
That Trump speaks, yeah. Wow.
He's going to talk to a joint session of Congress, minus some Democrats who are not going to be there. We refuse.
Doesn't matter.
I know. I'm like, okay, the less the merrier. That's fine.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how he frames everything.
Yeah, right.
How he communicates them, because this is his opportunity to have the sole path of anyone, nobody interfering, nobody else trying to interpret what he's saying.
Right.
This is his chance to say, here's what I believe about this, and this.
Yeah.
And we'll see if there's some clarity on some things that we're looking for, especially on tariffs.
Right.
On the, you mentioned before about, it's the same thing with me. People get upset. Well, some people get upset when we talk about tariffs. I had one lady who was upset. Talk about something else. We know what you think about tariffs. Talk about what's in the news. It's like, it's the number one story besides.
Well, yeah. I mean, yesterday afternoon,
was the number one
was
story.
Like, oh. Yeah, it was everywhere.
And I know, because people are sensitive, because they know that's Trump's weak spot.
Right. Right.
That's why they get upset.
There's controversy.
Don't mention it. Right.
From his own side, within his own side.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America. We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning.
Welcome.
One of the first points that Trump should make in his address to the semi-joint session.
Nearly complete joint sessions.
We're not going to go.
Yeah.
We're not going to go. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, nobody cares.
He'll be talking to the American public. If 100 people aren't there, nobody's going to notice or care. It's what the president's saying. The first thing I would do if I was Trump, the number one thing right out of the box, is saying what Democrats told you last year, that you needed Congress to do it, was the fact that Biden caused the problem at the border, did not want to solve the problem. I solved the problem at the border. You didn't need Congress. All you needed to do was to enforce our laws. You need to make sure that you take credit for what you do and put blame where it belongs. In politics, you have to do that.
Yep.
And so I hope that's one of the things that he leads on immediately, that he leads with, not leads on, leads with immediately. Then it's going to be interesting to see how he talks about everything, which would be after the border would be tariffs and Zelensky.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else is out there that you would have to hit right now, right this week, because that's. I'd hit the
transgender thing.
I'd hit the Senate vote on the transgender.
Yeah. That
you got bipartisan support. And I really think that Trump, this is where he should be. Look, Trump can be blunt. I think he should be more blunt on the radical transgender movement. I think he ought to bring up the word misogyny. I think he ought to say, why are Democrats misogynist? Why do Democrats want women not to be able to play women's sports? Why are they okay with the threats and intimidation of women? What is it about Democrats? I would, if it was me. I don't think he would. It might be too far. I might be convinced not to do it if I was president. But I would say, look, it goes along with their identity politics, judging people by groups and not individuals. Republicans still have not, in a way where they could package it very quickly within 30 seconds, pounded Democrats on the racism of identity politics and the misogyny of the radical transgender movement. I just did it right there. Mm-hmm. In 10 seconds, you can say it. But in 30 seconds, you can explain it fully where the American public will say, yeah, Democrats do that, don't they? They judge people by groups and not individuals. We believe in the individual. We don't care what your skin color is. And what about this misogyny? What about this women hatred? Why do Democrats hate women? And then have the Democrats boo you when you say that.
Right.
Oh, see, you're booing. You just voted not to allow women to play sports, and you're booing me.
Right.
Oh, you and I said this yesterday. Throw the damn decorum out the window. I don't care whether there's decorum anymore. I don't. I care about winning the argument every single day with the American public.
Well, I want the Democrats to actually be. I'd like them to be there and be booing. Yeah, boo women.
Yeah,
boo America.
And as soon as a couple of years ago you booed God, so I guess booing women is okay too. Boo, and you just smile. That Trump smile. Give that smile. Where you smile.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, the one where you're winning.
The Grinch smile. No, I just, you know what I mean? Exactly. I don't mean he's a Grinch. That smile just came where Trump's, just give that smile where he smiles like that when he stares straight ahead and does that.
Mm-hmm.
You and I said this last week. What was the debate about? You had Zelensky where they were blunt, but what was the one before? What was it, Thursday? And they were talking about, he had the British Prime Minister in. And they were talking about freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Pound him.
Yeah.
Pound him.
Yeah.
Defend what America's about. Freedom of speech. Go at it.
Yep.
It can be, if they write it correctly, it could be a great opportunity. But they're not going to go as far as I do. But I think the Republicans have to realize after the vote in the Senate that Democrats are not going to move away from the hatred of women that is now mainstream. To be a Democrat, you have to hate women in 2025.
Right.
He needs to say that. And Republicans you can't let the culture wars are not over. Because companies are dropping DEI does not mean that they're not going to bring it back if they get in power again. They're going to do the same damn thing over and over again. They don't think they have to learn any lesson. They believe they're right. They believe that their racism of identity politics and their women hatred through the misogyny of women in the radical transgender movement is what they truly believe. These are perverted people. Racist or evil. They're evil and they're misogynist.
Yep.
Boy, that's not really a twosome that I'd want to have.
No.
Twofer. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Not a twosome. A twofer.
I think a twosome's called a date.
Yeah. See, no wonder I didn't know what that was.
Forget threesome. He just wants a twosome. I'd settle for a onesome as long as there's beer.
Oh, no. I can't do a menage. I can't. I need robes and lotions and candles. I'd need orgy friends
and two other people. Yeah.
Seinfeld.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity for him. It's a great opportunity for him to explain everything to the American public. I don't know if he can explain tariffs because they haven't been able to yet because nobody knows what's the end game. And you got to know the end game when you're talking economics.
Oh, yeah.
The worst thing for the markets. And you and I said this. We said this back, remember, in 2008, 2009. Remember with the banks? All the banks have to take money because we cannot isolate and tell you what banks really have problems, so we have to pretend that all the banks have problems. And we said that extended that recession.
Because you made it look like all the banks were on the brink of insolvency.
Yep. By the way, that wasn't Trump's fault.
Right.
No. To do with that. I want to make that clear. But you've got to be clear on that because they weren't. And we believe that the economic impact would have been shorter if you would have identified the banks that have the problems and back them whatever you have to do with the FDIC instead of throwing the money around to make it seem like the entire banking system was on the verge of collapse because then nobody knew. And if you don't know, you don't do business.
Right.
So, yeah, we'll see what happens in that one. Now, I will say what I find really interesting is watching Great Britain debate. What? You're going to send soldiers? What are you talking about? All that,
right.
Going on about,
yeah.
what. And then the defense, Nigel Farage, for example, yesterday in Parliament, listen to this here, because he talks about what we had said early on. And early on, when Trump said the mineral thing, and Zelensky rejected it, we said, what are you, nuts? That's the first part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
What he's saying is let's have this economic relationship. And Nigel Farage gets into it a little bit more, deeper. Hang on here. I may have problems playing it, though. Let's check it out. Okay. Everything's frozen on my computer.
Yeah.
But we'll play that coming up here in a little bit because it's really it's really amazing to watch this happen.
Yeah.
It is amazing to watch. And now Europe is discussing, all right, what are we going to do? All right, we're in charge. We're going to take the lead. We're going to get the United States involved in it, but we need to take the lead. I think that's what Trump has been saying all along, isn't it?
That's exactly
in areas of your hemisphere.
He's been saying this overall for decades. It's his most consistent belief, his top most consistent belief. Other nations have to carry their own weight. The U.S. can't carry it all. Go back and watch the interviews. Larry King, Donahue, or anywhere.
Larry, look, your breath is terrible.
Yeah.
Now, can we get into talking about the fact that the United States can't do everything?
Yeah. It's so funny. Hey, Larry, do you mind backing up?
Okay, I've got it.
All right. You got it?
Here we go. Yeah, I had a reboot.
All right.
Here we go.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you. It may be a great irony that a Remainer Prime Minister used Brexit freedoms as effectively as he did yesterday. Indeed, as number 10 briefed, we are now in a unique position compared to the rest of Europe, and yesterday was a triumph. I also applaud him making such positive words about President Trump and our relationship with America, even if nobody behind him agrees. But here's the key. President Zelensky has now accepted that he's going to sign the minerals agreement with America. And America's going to put in $100 billion or whatever it is, and thousands of Americans will be in Ukraine. Is that of itself enough of a security guarantee? No. Or does it mean that we need to send British troops? And if we do, given the size of our army, how many?
There you go. There's thousands of Americans. There's no need for British soldiers is the point because the Russians aren't going to attack if there's Americans there.
Right. If there's a direct American interest in Ukraine, that's the whole point.
But I love it. I mean, nobody ever paid attention to what Trump has said for the last 40 years. And so they're like shocked by, haven't you been paying attention? There are some things that he has been consistent on all along.
Right.
And that's one of them.
Right. And
it doesn't.
It's not shocking if you're paying attention. And it's also a very simple idea to understand if you're just learning it.
And it doesn't mean you give up the power of the United States.
No,
the influence and power of the United States is still there based on our economic and military might.
Right.
But what you do is if it's the United States always making these deals and the countries that should be more involved in it are not, you do build resentment.
Right.
Because when you get the responsibility and you succeed at it, then you realize, well, okay, we're able to do what we need to do in our part of this hemisphere. This affects us the most. We need to take hold of the things that are more critical to us than the United States. Not that the United States doesn't have an interest in it, but the fact is, these are your borders.
Right.
And you need to pay. I mean, my God, they're talking about 3.5% of GDP for military. Did you ever think that was going to happen?
No. No.
The United States was trying to get them to 2.5. They're up to 3.5.
Yeah, right.
It's like, wow.
Yeah. Look, the way it was handled in the Oval Office by Zelensky the other day was disastrous. But let's be clear. He's not in control. You have to get him to the table with Putin. But the controlling interest here really is the U.S. and now Europe in moving this deal forward if a mining deal is going to be done. We're the deciders. We're the ones who decide if this is going to happen, which is why I firmly believe Zelensky had no intention in signing on Friday. None. I don't know what changes there to between the two parties, Trump and Zelensky, to start those talks over again, and I don't know where it goes. But this plan was a very, very solid plan. Again, just one step in the right direction.
A small step, but a big step.
Yeah, well,
that makes sense.
It's a big move, but it's not a big military move.
Well,
right?
It was one small step for man, one giant. Okay, maybe that's the wrong thing to use.
Probably not. Yeah. Exactly. And it was a very, again, it's a very basic idea. Very basic idea. Very simple to understand.
Here's something that J.D. Vance said yesterday that matches. Well, we'll play it coming up next, okay? Because this fits what we just said. Mm-hmm. When you don't take responsibility, you can say whatever you want. You can say one thing in public and one thing in private. You can't when the responsibility is yours.
Right.
And we'll get to that coming up next. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Here's Vice President Vance yesterday.
Sean, here's the problem with the Europeans. And a lot of these guys are our friends. They're our allies. We, of course, the president has a great relationship with a lot of European heads of state, and so do I, but they need to be realistic. Mm-hmm. And the craziest part about this, Sean, is that sometimes you'll have European heads of state who in public will puff up their chest and say, we're in it with President Zelensky for the next 10 years. And then in private, they'll pick up the phone and say, this can't go on forever. He has to come to the negotiating table. So I honestly don't care what the Europeans say in public. What I care is what they say in private. And what they need to be saying to President Zelensky is, this can't go on forever. The bloodshed, the killing, the economic devastation, it's making everyone worse off. The only pathway, I think, back to peace and prosperity is what the president is trying to accomplish. Yeah, Sean.
And the other thing is too, when you look at it, and I'm guessing he would agree with this, that when the United States is put in charge of everything, even when it's over your hemisphere, well, then you don't have to be honest. You can say one thing in public and the other thing in private.
You've got that luxury.
Right. You can't do it now that Great Britain's saying, okay, we need to come to peace. We need to have peace, and we need to have our soldiers over there maybe also. Well, then that's when all hell's breaking loose in Parliament that you see right now.
Right.
Because now you've got to be honest with the people because you're the one that's making the decision.
Right.
In your hemisphere.
It's no longer just virtue signaling.
Yeah.
You got to make a move, not just any move.
And so with the United States, as we have in the past, making all the decisions, and then if it's the wrong decision, it's like, well, why the hell's the United States? You get the animosity towards the United States because why are they sticking their hand at everything and this thing didn't work out?
Right.
So to sit there and say, and you're not giving up, this is what the left will say. Well, you're giving up American authority. No, you're not.
No, you're not.
As long as we have a great economy and the top military in the world, we're going to have it.
Right.
To sit there and say, because they've even said Great Britain, well, okay, with the consultation of the United States got to be at the negotiating table also. They know that.
Right.
But it's like, no, we want you to do it, and we want your approval on this deal and everything else. Well, that's fine. We can do that.
Mm-hmm.
We're all allies, but when it comes to your part of the world and your defense and your borders, and this is where we talk about, where we had tens of thousands of troops that have lessened over the years, but still we have tens of thousands of troops over there. How long does that stay? When is it? It's World War II. How long ago? Going on 80 years? And it's like, when does it come to the point where you have to take care of your own? Canada, for example, I saw this. I'll check to see if it's verified. Well, we're going to give, 10 jet fighters, whatever, to help defend it. And someone said they only have 63 jets in all of Canada.
Oh, wow.
In their military. It's like, wow.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Yeah, I did verify it. Canada has 63 jet fighters. Because when Trudeau was saying, we'd like 10 available, it's like that's 1/6 of their supply that they have. So I checked to see what the United States has, and this is if you go through the Air Force, Navy, Marines, everything in jet fighters. Okay, not considering drones. That the U.S. Army has a lot of drones, and not counting the drones that they have that they use for military purposes. Man jet fighters over 2,500.
Okay,
so if you see that for their for their country size, when you look at it, which is bigger than the United States, their geographical territory.
Right, yeah.
They have 63. We have 2,500. If you look at their population, which is 1/10 of the United States, that would mean that if they wanted to be comparable population size, it would be, and budget size, too, as to what we spend, that'd be 250 jet fighters.
Now,
roughly.
They can afford, what they say, 10? They can afford the 10 jets because they only have 3 pilots. Yeah, but this is, again, everybody's having the conversation. Everybody's talking about this. And what's interesting about what Vice President Vance said earlier, the audio cut that you played in talking with Sean Hannity, it's what it shows is everybody is having the conversation. Like you said about Great Britain. Wow. Before, it was almost like the Facebook approach, right, with other nations on Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine. Now everybody's got to talk about what they're actually going to do. And that's the conversation. That's where it should have begun. But was that going to happen under Biden? No, it wasn't. Let's just send money to them. Let's just send money to them. Let's just keep this going. Well, as Vance said, behind the scenes, other nations are saying, yeah, this can't go on forever. And now you're seeing the real conversations rise to the surface. Because, no, it can't go on forever. And, look, nobody wants to go to war with Russia. But I believe eventually there is a deal to be made. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know when that is. Because it depends on the will. You know, we talk about changing hearts and minds. In this equation, I think one of the hearts and mind you need to change is Zelensky's. You know, you get the public will, right? When it comes to things of war, you gotta explain to the public why you're getting involved. Well, in this case, in getting to the table with Russia, the one heart and mind you have to convince, in my opinion, is Zelensky. He's still not there yet, I don't think. So, does he want this war to end, or does he just want to go on being a mythical war hero for the left of the world?
You know, where Trump was right, remember in 2018 remember the German leaders laughed at Trump? Because it's like you're buying oil from Russia.
Right.
And it's a mistake. And now we know the EU sends more money every month. This is a great point that they made. It's a great point that the EU sends more money to Putin every month than to Zelensky in aid dollars. So you're more supporting Russia.
Yeah.
You're more supporting Putin. And Trump warned them, don't do that.
Right. Look, you could carve Russia out as a pariah with everybody on board. Choke them out. Now, they still have China. They still have a few friends in the world. But major nations could say, go to the table and say, no, we'll carve you out as a pariah. You pull back, stay within your borders. Otherwise, that's going to happen. You put the pressure on the way that we know to do. And creating an American interest in Ukraine works on every level. That mining deal works on every level. Because, well, in one way, you're kind of teaching a man to fish, right? Because beyond the war, then Ukraine can use that for whatever. Stand on your own, pay your own way. Again, things Trump has believed in since the beginning, since he's been a public figure long before he was president. And we don't have to do that. We don't have to chip in for that. Here, you go in and you do the mining. We get an agreement. We have an interest in there. And Putin knows. You mind your P's and Q's when it comes to American interests. So, it's, again, one step. You're not sending 5,000 troops over. You're not sending, billions and billions more over. You set up a situation where eventually they can take it from here. They can stand on their own 2 feet. And if they actually want it, I honestly don't think Zelensky wants any of this. Tell me where the will is here. I think he just wants to be seen as this mythical hero of this whole thing. You know, Putin needs to be dealt with. But in order to get there, you first have to get the two, Zelensky and Putin, to the table on a deal to end this war. I don't think Zelensky wants to be there. Again, I think his heart and mind is the one you have to convince. Not the public of the U.S. or
I think
Europe.
I think the most important thing that comes from this, and this is where people that I normally might agree with on a lot of other issues, the Wall Street Journal and National Review, are just way off on this. It's easy when the United States takes care of everything for the blame to be on the U.S.
Right. Yeah.
But then when you put the responsibility on them, this is your part of the hemisphere, you take care of it. Look, we're in NATO. Russia crosses it, we're at war with you.
Right.
That's the deal.
Right.
But other than that, you need, after this war has been going on for this significant period of time, you need to take care of it.
Right.
And the implicit security guarantee for Europe is NATO.
Right.
So you have to decide what you are willing to sacrifice outside of the United States. We're not going to do it. You do it. I don't know. Nobody's been able to convince me why that is a bad focus or a bad direction for the United States to go in 2025.
Right.
When we look at it and say, we've got to cut back on everything. We cannot continue the debt that we have. Other free countries must take responsibility for their own defense and their own hemisphere. They've got to make the decisions on, we'll be there if all hell breaks loose because we've committed to it through NATO. But you're the ones that are going to have to negotiate and do a lot of this. We'll consult you. If you want us to agree with it or not agree with it, we'll tell you our opinion. But the responsibility is yours.
Right.
And you see in Parliament all the hell that was breaking loose yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? We got to send our people over?
Right.
And all of a sudden you're seeing, you check out the social media from Great Britain, and you see it, going back and forth. Well, then will you send your son? Will you send your daughter to go fight? And all of a sudden, boom, it's like what we deal with all the time.
Sure.
Well, they don't have to deal with it when it's the United States' responsibility.
Right.
Now it's all of a sudden it's been put on them. They're doing it, and they're seeing what happens when you have to take responsibility, for your section or your area or, of the world.
It goes back to what Trump has been saying for years, what you just mentioned. Yeah, we're there if you need it. But we're done carrying everybody and giving them the luxuries of, we talked about it the other day. So you're going to punish free speech. Well, wait a minute. That's something we have given, our nation has given countless lives.
Yeah, you're right.
To protect free speech. And we're supposed to stand with you when you want to put people in jail?
Yeah, no, that we talked about that with the other day. Have that discussion. I don't care. This whole discussion on decorum, that's you and I came in yesterday with the exact same opinion. It's like, what are you, out of your freaking mind?
Are you kidding me?
I could care less about decorum anymore. I want things done.
Get the work done.
And yes.
John McNamara, do the job.
If Europe is going to jail people for free speech, yes, the United States should criticize.
Absolutely. You're going to put people in jail.
Well, we better...
And we're giving lives to protect free speech. You want to put them in jail. The answer is no.
Right.
I mean, it's maddening. And the left has pretended... I don't know where they got this from. Don't we want to be seen as the country that what is this? Is this a pageant? What are we doing? But for them, it is. And they were doing that. I know a guy. Barack Obama. Don't we want somebody like that in office that people like? I don't care about what the rest of the world thinks. But Obama had to go on the apology tour, remember. So, all these things are now coming into play of things that matter. Why? Because something needs to be done. And doing things is hard. And doing the right thing requires work. It requires discipline. And nobody seems to have it. But when you lived under the luxury of the U.S. carrying you for a long, way too long time, you get away with that until it's time for you to do something.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's our crony, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just reading this here from Sky News. Let me see. You could member of parliament. Is this a Ukrainian member of parliament? Urges European leaders to focus on bringing the U.S. back on board rather than just issuing statements. He also calls on the British royal family to help persuade America. We can't stop Russian missiles with statements. Well, that's where Great Britain's going to have to. This is where Europe, Great Britain, and others have to take the lead.
Well, again,
that's what they said yesterday they were going to, and 2 days ago that they were going to do.
Right.
What the prime minister said.
Right. And, in Ukraine, just basically it's, I think, what Zelensky himself wants as well. Hey, tell the U.S. to come fight our war for us. It's because the mining deal, I don't think Zelensky had interest in it because it wasn't us committing to fight the war. It was one step, creating an American interest in Ukraine. That's a big step. As you mentioned, it's a big, small step.
Well,
because you don't have to do military things, the big military thing.
Well, the first thing is when it goes to the UK, they start talking about we need troops.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
The people of the United States don't want it. No matter where you stand as a Democrat, nobody wants that.
By the way, what J.D. Vance said the other day in the meltdown in the office, you're short on manpower. And then he got his socks all in a twist, but he knows it. We're not going to fight your war for you.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America. We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning.
Good morning.
I love this here. Let's get to a bunch of other stories. Former NBC Meet the Press anchor Chuck Todd delivered a brutal opinion about former President Biden, calling him a craven political animal who was more concerned about his political career than his own family. I remember when Chuck Todd was on Meet the Press, and he was on this narrative consistently.
Oh, yeah. While Biden was in office. He was one of the first to say it, Chuck Todd. It became almost a slogan. He said it so much.
During an appearance Sunday on Lincoln Project co-founder Steve Schmidt's The Warning podcast, Todd delved into why the Democrats lost the 2024 election and what he perceives as the media's relationship with the second Trump administration. After decrying older politicians remaining in the leadership of the Democratic Party, Todd returned to Biden's role in the November election loss. Joe Biden never should have been there in the first place, right? Number one, he should not have run for president in 2020, Todd remarked.
But he did, and the Democrat rank and file collectively made him the nominee.
Yep. I completely got so angry at Joe Biden, the man, when I read the transcript of the Hunter Biden trial, and when I realized that not one, not two, but three Biden children, and I count Bo's widow, were all dealing with drug problems in 2018, and Joe Biden said, now there's a perfect time to run for president because who cares about my family? What? I have to tell you something about Joe Biden. There's this mythology about Joe Biden that the man cared so much. It's all bull blank, he said.
Mm-hmm.
Todd said Biden had created the myth. Can you help promote it?
Right.
God. Over his 40-year career, that he was an incredible family man. And instead, what he really was a craven political animal that was desperate, that considered a run for president every 4 years, that he was eligible. Fox News Digital reached out to Biden's office for comment and did not immediately hear back.
Right. Yeah. This turn and separation, they always on the left. Why is it that they act like the internet doesn't exist?
I don't know.
I've been saying this for years, but they really do. They act like you can't fact check this as to where Chuck Todd clearly has stood. And now that Biden, well, in my opinion, has never been useful, but for them, he was no longer useful. And now that he's out of office, fair game. This guy, Biden, I never liked the guy. You supported the guy.
You defended.
I don't know why, but the Joe Scarborough thing the other day was in my head. The turn between F you if you can't handle the truth, when he was challenging anybody that said there was a cognitive issue with Joe Biden, to I just didn't see it, Joe Scarborough. Shut up. You're a horrible liar. You either never believed it or you did. I tend to believe you didn't believe it. It was just about his political viability at the time, and he was going to beat Trump. So it didn't matter. And then it all collapsed, and Trump had the political comeback of all American history. Well, that's on you guys, including the liberal activist media and people like Chuck Todd. You own it. You touched it. You broke it. Now you got to pay for it. That's the way it works. And it's over and over again. It's so entertaining, though, when we get to go over this. And it's because these aren't mea culpas. Scarborough kind of tried it. I guess I didn't see it. No, Joe. Let's go back to the first remark, F you if you can't handle the truth about Joe Biden. And here, another attempt by another person, Chuck Todd, wanting you to believe that he never supported Joe Biden running. I mean, even running for office, because he goes back to to 2018. Yeah, right. They right now are, I don't know where you are. I don't know where this, there is no mea culpa here that would work. I was completely wrong because you have to walk the mea culpa all the way through because it means you're completely wrong on the issues you defend too, right? You can't just go half measure. I was wrong about Joe Biden. I was wrong about, no. They're not going to do that. It's an attempt to make himself look smart here, Chuck Todd, in this weird analysis of Joe Biden, which we know, of course, he supported Joe Biden up until he didn't.
Yeah, I just find it's hilarious because Chuck Todd was the worst in defending Joe Biden. All of a sudden, they all come out, oh, no.
Well, he's filled with rage like a lot of them are. Even on the set, you can see it when they're debating. And they believe their purpose. Tim Russert on that same set would play devil's advocate and did a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of homework. You better have done your own homework about you before you go on with Tim Russert. And Tim Russert would play devil's advocate, and here's what you said then. Here's the quote, or video, or soundbite. And here's what you're saying now. Why the difference? He would approach it from a very thoughtful place in that he did his homework and was delivering to the audience. I'm going to play the advocate because you sitting across from me, you have advocates, or not devil's advocate, because you have adversaries out there that are asking the same questions I'm going to ask. You have people out there that disagree with you, don't like this or whatever. And so my approach is going to be, all right, why that? Well, the rest of them have become activists. There are very few journalists left. Michael Schellenberger, Barry Weiss, Matt Taibbi. And there's more that we don't name. We name those three because their association with the Twitter files and how also they have, you look at Barry Weiss, former New York Times. And nobody makes the claim that these people are hardcore conservatives today, but they're journalists doing honest journalism. I may disagree with an opinion they have, but I know they're being honest about it. The activists out there in the newsrooms today, they want to make a name for themselves, including people like Chuck Todd. I'd put Joe Scarborough on that list.
Oh, God.
I mean, it's just embarrassing. Just embarrassing. Because I think to myself, you and I have talked about it, I think to myself, if I were at that level, if I were on the Sunday morning news show, I mean, I don't know how much of an impact it is today, but my dad back in the day would watch Meet the Press. So if I were the host of Meet the Press, moderator of Meet the Press, I'd be talking to my dad after every show. And my dad, if he, thinks something is up, something isn't right. So, how's it going? I mean, just the way he poses the very simple question. The point is, I'd have to answer to my dad and my family and everybody else. And if you're not taking an honest approach, if you're an activist, that's, to me, not an honest approach. You can be an activist. That's fine. That's not the setting. I don't care if you're opinionated. That's fine, too. Also not the setting. But these people are wholly dishonest in most cases. They just are. In order to make their point, which they don't effectively do, they have to lie. And it's not effective because it's a lie. And they now, more and more, you see them. Oh, Joe Biden. Oh, it's hard. Can't even believe he ran in the first place. Yes, you can. The Democratic Party, basically, this is the second time they pushed him to the curb. The first time was 2016 because he was the outgoing vice president, and typically that person actually is on the rise. But they also kicked him to the curb then because it was her time. And that didn't work. And we saw what happened in the 24 cycle. He couldn't get through the debate, and then he's out. Well, they all saw the issues. Scarborough, Chuck Todd, all the Beltway insiders, everybody saw the issues. I'm not asking any of them to diagnose, but you know there is an issue. I don't know what the issue is specifically, but there's a cognitive issue with him, and it goes back to 2020, and the party knew that too. But you guys held him up, propped him up, and you did the weekend at Bernie's thing all the way up to the point that you had no choice but to kick him to the curb. And that's how it played out, and you were part of it. Don't get on this high horse of, oh, he never should have. I don't know. I'm going to analyze them. Shut up. Nobody ever believed that Joe Biden cares about his family. Joe Biden cares about Joe Biden.
Yeah, we never.
You
bought
guys,
we never bought that.
And you guys know that.
The only thing he considered his family was in the influence peddling and everything that was set up to make his family rich.
Because he could facilitate that money coming through them.
Right. But he didn't care about it. But remember, that's what we heard. Remember, Joe cares about his son. He didn't give a damn about his son. The best part is it's one of the biggest liberals to ever come through the media that is the one that just brutalizes Joe Biden, saying he didn't give a damn about his family.
Right.
Just greatness.
We know that you've known this all along, but you helped to build a facade.
Was there any pushback? Let's pay attention to see if there's any pushback from Democrats to Chuck Todd about Biden.
Yeah, right. So far, silence.
I haven't seen anything yet. There's been nothing yet. 866-98 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Harley Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Just reading here. This is a couple days old, but Robert Kennedy Jr. Measles outbreak is a call to action for all of us, including vaccines. Okay, that's...
The winds of change are a-blowing.
Well, he said, we'll do the bidding of Trump, which, we said, okay, fine. Especially with him, the labor secretary, as long as you do what Trump is mandating, that's fine, and not your own beliefs in there. But so he did mention Wiesels.
That's a new one.
Get a Wiesels. I'm going to get a Wiesels. Why say measles vaccine? Just
right.
Wiesels.
I need the Wiesels.
Give me the Wiesels.
Yeah.
So he's all for. Here's the point. Look, we know that there's a difference. Many people believe when you talk about the COVID vaccine versus other vaccines. But as we know, RFK Jr. has come out in the past and said all vaccines are bad.
Well, his book will be interesting when he writes it in 4 years. We'll find out the truth.
Yeah,
maybe.
But and so like I said, when he had come out against, and then Trump set him straight. He goes, no, the polio vaccine, because Trump's old enough. He remembers. Mm-hmm. I remember my uncles that had polio before the vaccine came out.
Yeah,
one of my uncles could never use his arm. My Uncle George. I mean, it was and he had polio and he was young. And so when you think about it, when you think of, good God, smallpox.
Yeah. Sure.
Dad just recently told the stories of when, you actually had on doors of houses quarantine.
Yeah.
And people didn't come out of their house.
Right.
And, so I just thought that was interesting when I read that. I said, okay. Because we've been watching. Is he going to follow what Trump says, or is he going to go out, on his own offshoot branches? And that's fine.
Yeah, right.
And so I just saw that one. Trans athlete wins MVP of women's college basketball tournament in Canada after dominating.
Yeah, he won first, second, and third place, too.
He Kramered it. He dominated the dojo.
Exactly. Karate.
Karate.
Dominated. MVP. All right.
A Canadian women's college basketball conference championship game on Saturday saw a man player score 21 points in victory and ultimately the tournament MVP. Mm-hmm. Why? Because men are better than women.
Ladies, you had your time.
You had your time.
There are other things you can do.
Yeah.
We're not sure what, but other things.
Well,
this is what the left is saying to them effectively.
The way Democrats are going, the kitchen, there are kitchen activities that you can be maybe involved in.
Right, maybe take your shoes off while you're in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. All right, here we go. Ready for the new leader, the Democratic leader.
Oh.
Because we always thought, who's the new leader? And it's got to be my congresswoman.
Yeah.
Jasmine Crockett.
Yeah.
What a nutcase.
Does that make the drive home in the morning worse?
Only when I took a bike ride yesterday, and so I went about 1,000 feet, and then I was outside her district.
And then the sun started shining all of a sudden?
It did come out.
Birds chirping.
It was awfully gloomy.
Go back in, all of a sudden it's cloud cover, fog.
Before we get back to that, I did tell you that another person yesterday or 2 days ago on Facebook.
Yeah.
And another, somebody I've known for the longest time, said if you vote, if you support the Republicans or the traitor at all, unfriend me. So that's a second person.
All right.
Has demanded that. Now, the first person who did it was way, way back in last September, which was a neighbor of mine.
Right.
And I've always got along with this neighbor.
Yeah.
And didn't know this was the neighbor that I told you before we were even red eye. When you and I were working together. And I came home. It was 4th of July. I was visiting my buddy Jerry and his lovely wife Mary in Tarpon Springs, Florida. So I came back. It was 4th of July weekend. It was 4th of July when I got back that day. Probably about 5, 6 at night. This neighbor was having their party was spilling out into the street, which is fine because it's not a busy street. And people were all over there. And when I got out of my car, hey, Gary, come on over. And they want to introduce me to two of her relatives that were huge fans of ours.
Oh.
I'll never forget. This goes back. It's got to go back. Because we've been
2005.
Yeah, okay, 2005, but Red Eye, 2012. So, yeah, we were together 7 years before we started Red Eye. By the way, I saw Andrew Breitbart, the anniversary of his death. That's what I was thinking was 12 years ago.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You and I had interviewed him just a week or so before he died. Remember that?
Yeah.
But he was like, she was, it was the she neighbor. The she neighbor. I like that. She's the one that put out the Facebook thing. If anybody is a supporter of Trump, unfriend me now. But it was her relative who said, do you know who this guy is? It's like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Do you know? Do you understand? You're a neighbor of me. And it was like, so, I mean, it was fine. Well, she's the one that just is apparently so far left. I've never had a political talk with her. And then she put out September, and so I did. If people were, I never refuse what a woman tells me to do. And when she said,
and it's worked out so far.
Yeah, exactly. They don't bother me at all.
I think the court order says 500 feet, but that's okay. Go ahead.
So I did. I mean, I can still. I checked it out about a month ago. I said, wonder if she's still, because she's still open where you can view it.
Yeah.
And she took the post down.
Okay.
And then I told you that the neighbor right across the street from her, I couldn't see it because he has so many cars in the driveway. But you could from exactly across the street. And they used to be great friends. So I don't know when he put it up. It had to be before the election, but it was still up in December. And it was a huge Trump sign.
Wow.
And they used to be great friends. I don't know if they still are or not, or whether she just said, I'm done, whatever, but with you. But that was, but yeah, so when I jumped on the bike yesterday to do a bike ride, it was very lightly misting, though. It was very nice. But then when I did get 3 blocks away, which is where Crockett's district ends and I'm in. Now, remember, I moved in there such a long time ago that when I moved in, 90%, because I live in a Democrat precinct. And if you look at the way her district, the 30th district, is gerrymandered, it's all over the place. And the little tip of the southern end of it, I'm 3 blocks away from being in a Republican congressperson's district. But yeah, the biggest nutcase in the Democratic Party right now is my congressperson.
All right.
Here's what she said yesterday, okay? Here we go. All right.
So, unfortunately, we have someone that is occupying the White House, and as far as I'm concerned, he is an enemy to the United States. He swore an oath just like the rest of us. But right now, when you are literally putting us at risk, all because of what? Because you want to convince your followers that you should be a dictator too, that you should never leave the White House. because you don't believe that elections should take place. I don't really understand what is going on, and I don't know what it's going to take to get people to wake up.
I think she's decided to lower the tone of her voice. She's lowered it an octave there.
Yeah. Not really screaming, but still crazy.
Yes. Still crazy. But mellow crazy. You see that. I'm actually trying to make a point here.
Have a point.
When you see that, did you see the story of Governor Hochul abruptly shifts her stance now as she claims to lead the anti-Trump resistance in New York? We're coming back hard.
Mm-hmm.
So you see that. You see this here. You see the way the Senate voted. Every single Democrat senator voted yesterday to allow men playing against women in sports, to invade their private spaces in the locker room, to define what a woman is. And so what you see from the Democrat Party is not at all anything that they have learned. It's simply one thing. And that one thing is we are going to embrace crazy, because we know that even if some in our party don't endorse the crazy ideas we have, they're not going to vote against us. And I really think they've looked at it and said, we've got 47% no matter what we do, as long as Trump is around. And so we're just going to be crazy, because our voters, even if they don't agree with us, will keep putting us in office. Whether they're afraid of us, we don't know. We don't know what the reason is. Whether it's just hatred towards Trump, we still have 47% behind us. And that's why, look, whenever we talk tariffs, we get pushback, but it's only one thing. I don't want the Democrats getting in power. And I don't believe I can control economics. I don't believe the president can control economics. It's that simple. And I'm afraid that he solved the one big problem. And the other problem that we have is the economy. And I don't know what he thinks on tariffs, because he won't give us a straight answer. I've had a couple of debates, email with people that just won't answer my questions. And I had to tell one guy, stop being a Bubba Trumper. Stop just throwing out stuff without analyzing it. Trump does a ton of great things, but he has an obligation and a responsibility to the people that put him in office, including me, to explain to me why precisely he is doing something that has the potential of being economically devastating, and giving me 3 different options to try to figure it out
as to why.
As to why doesn't cut it. And if you're not happy with it, I don't give a damn. He has a responsibility to all of us to explain why he is doing something, and he hasn't. And when I explained this to the one guy, said, stop being a Bubba Trumper, because I went through Canada with him. I said, tell me why you're doing it on Canada. Well, because he improved NAFTA, but not enough. Well, wait, we have a trade surplus, except for oil. He's begging for the oil. Mm-hmm. Explain it. Mm-hmm. Guy just ignores the question, can't answer the question. They're important questions to ask. The economy is critical to holding the House and Senate 2 years from now. And if you wish to be cheerleader and rah-rah sis boom bah and not ask the serious questions, that's on you. Don't ask me to be you. Well, I'm not going to be a Bubba.
Well, and the problem with having to clean up everything the Democrats have done is that you're creating something you're going to have to clean up. Potentially.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen. If you hear all the analysis after the announcement yesterday, all the analysis was, well, they're negotiating. Well, then you're going to, in order to negotiate, you're going to give up something. You want to gain something, give up something. That's what negotiating is.
Yeah, but his surrogate said he's negotiating. Mm-hmm. Trump didn't say that.
Nope. He didn't say it in the first term, and he ended up doing USMCA, and now we're back asking the question, are we doing USMCA 2? NAFTA 3, as Kevin O'Leary called it? Yeah. I don't know. The problem on this is there's no clear direction as to what you want. And if you wanted to end it and just say one thing and not jump all over the place, if you wanted to just start with, no, tariffs across the board, boom. That's the way we're doing things. And don't, fentanyl or this or back to the table on USMCA or none of that comes into play. Then at least there would be an understanding, okay, this is going to be the real deal.
And my fear is I want what everybody wants who's listening right now if you're a conservative Republican. And that is I don't want the Democrats in power again. Immigration's been taken care of in the American public's mind. The next thing is costs.
Yep.
Costs in the economy. That's it.
People want prices to come down.
Right.
As unrealistic as that is for it to happen this early, they want to see something on the horizon.
And frankly, I don't understand people being infuriated because you're asking for questions and clarity on something that is so critical. Because all the surrogates were out there yesterday, as you mentioned, saying this is a negotiating tactic. Trump's not saying that.
No.
Well, then you got to figure out what he's saying. What do you mean I got to figure out what he's saying? He's got to explain to me what he's saying, and I don't know what he's saying.
Well, this administration has this coming in. They had the momentum of a lifetime, political momentum of a lifetime.
Yep.
You got to keep that going.
Yeah. And you've done it with clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So much of it's been done with clarity.
Yep.
Here's what we believe on this, and this.
Right. Keep that going.
But, right there, I mean, that's what scares me when I see that the Democrats believe they don't have – and by the way, the Democrats, number one, have always been pro-tariff. They love it. Mm-hmm. But remember why the Democrats have been pro-tariff, why Bernie Sanders has been pro-tariff. They want the economy. They want less economic growth because that helps their climate change agenda. They've said it over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
866-98 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Our show ends in an hour. And if you aren't able to listen to the entire show, after the show is over, we record it, and it becomes our podcast that you can listen to at any time. And if for some reason you can't listen to one of our great radio stations and you're up overnight, we stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app. There you go.
And thank you for listening. We greatly appreciate it.
Coming up, look at this here. Newsom orders state workers to return to office 4 days a week in California.
What?
And also, Newsom declares an emergency to clear brush.
What?
So fires won't start. He's running in 2028.
Leading from behind.
He's starting his podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing things he should have done but wouldn't have done unless he's made the decision, I got to try to run in 2028.
Yeah.
I mean, what's my competition so far? Walls? Ah!
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.